Okay,
I think we're live.
we're live.
Hello, everybody. It's Michael and Tina here from Better Yourself 365 with another one of our Facebook Lives that we like to do with people about either relationships or health. And we're a company that really tries to help people in those two areas of their life. And today, Tina's going to talk about which aspect we're going to work on today.
Yeah, today we'll spend the next 15 minutes or so focusing on how to better your relationship with your teenagers, but more specifically, how to help them develop a very important skill or a very important value about wanting to be focused on self-growth, right? And so we'll explain today what that is, what we mean by that when we say self-growth. We'll explain, why that's important and how can we actually do that as parents. So, so you want to get us started on that, honey? Like, what is that? What do we mean by that when we mean the value of self-growth for teenagers?
Sure. So we're therapists, as you know, so we encourage the growth of the human, and this is what we work with our clients a lot on. And our teenagers and us, we're no different. We all have to grow in order to live, in order to survive and be happy. So essentially, when it comes to our teenagers, sometimes we need to give them a little nudge or give them the framework or the structure to be able to push forward, take some risks, and be okay with changing and make sure that they're moving in the right direction. So for us, self-growth is a very critical piece. Obviously, they're physically growing. We can't really do anything about that other than feed them the right food and make sure they get enough sleep and exercise.
Yeah.
But the self-growth is more of a self. It's obviously focused on the self. It's the person, and so those qualities that help people develop their character and their values and their belief system.
And the more we can help our teenagers develop that at that age, the easier it is for them to have that throughout their life, right? Because a lot of adults sometimes just start developing that later in their life, and some adults actually never develop that part.
Yeah, because it's actually something that can be relatively addictive. There's a lot of self-help books in the self-help section of the chapters bookstore, but teenagers have a developing brain that doesn't really. We have two boys, and their brain doesn't hit its full potential until they're around 25 years old. So until then, we're sort of part of their brain. So we need to help them along this, and just to embrace the positive nature of growing and being okay with making mistakes and the things that come along with growing.
And what would you say are the challenges for parents to do that with teenagers?
Yeah, well, obviously,
there's some.
Your relationship with your teenager probably is the critical factor for them to be open to listening to what you have to offer. And they're also really focused on the present moment and not always thinking about the future, and very self-conscious about, while they're changing and the friends aren't changing. So there's a bit of pressure on them not to change too much compared to their friends.
And there's also the idea that, I'm sure if you have teenagers, you've heard this before, like, I don't need to know this. I don't need more help. I know it all, right? They don't say I know it all, but it kind of comes across that way.
Yeah, and I think that's a funny joke. It's like, when your kids are really young, you know everything as a parent. And then when they're in their teenage years, you don't know anything as a parent. And I have a feeling that it curls back around to, a lot of stuff as a parent after the teenage years are over. So this is that time where your voice just maybe doesn't carry as much weight as it used to.
Yeah, so that's why we want to share some tips to try to help you navigate that as much as you can, accepting some of the things that you can't really change as parents of teenagers, right? So you try to put this self-growth value, you try to instill that gradually, little by little. It's not something you kind of immerse them in. It's little by little. Yeah. So you want to get started talking about those
Well, yeah. Tips? Well, we have really three things that we want to talk about in particular, and I think you're going to start with the
Yep,
first
I'll
one.
start with the first one. So the first one actually is like a lot of things with our kids, is we have to model it. So if we model it ourselves, our kids pick that up. They see it. So modeling and talking about it. So, like sometimes I get anything that you do around self-growth, get open with it. And it's not like all the time you talk about it or anything, but you insert it where you can. For example, when I meditate in the morning, I do it in my bedroom. And when the kids come in to say hi, they see me meditating, right? I exercise. We have a gym here. They see us exercise, which is, it's not really the same as self-growth, but it's all part of setting goals and working towards something, which is part of self-growth too. But things like, telling them about your own journey that you might have had growing up and the things that you've had to learn along the way, or maybe the things that you've learned from different mentors in your life. Speaking that around them gives them the impression that you've grown through other people too, taking in mentorship, taking in, right? We share with our kids about any PD that we do, like that we're constantly learning from. We talk about it at the table so they see what we're getting from it. We share some of our goals, some of our business goals or some of our personal goals that we set, so they see that that's on our mind, that we work towards that, right? And it's a shame sometimes I see couples that I work with wanting to keep part of that, even the fact that they come to therapy. They want to keep that from their kids. And I get that when the kids are younger and they don't really pick up on that the couple is having some problems and they're seeking therapy and they don't want to scare them around that. I get that. But when they're a teenager and they're very aware that you're having difficulties, it's such a good modeling to be able to tell them, hey, mom and dad are having some hard times right now. That happens sometimes in relationships, but this is what we're doing to make it better. And we're really working hard, and we want you to know we'll be okay, and we're working towards it, right? And that's what therapy is for. And, this is what we're getting out of it. Those kinds of things, that is very helpful.
No, that's really, that's... I think that, and it doesn't always have to be the parents, and we will talk about in tip 3.
Yes, other people too.
Role
right.
models might not always be the parents, but ensuring that at least at home, you're really the main voice for your teenagers.
Yeah.
And they will do as you do, not as you say.
Yes.
So if you talk about, the importance of being open and flexible and trying new things, but you don't, well, I have a pretty good idea how they're going to feel about that.
Right. And it is, it is what you do and showing them what you do, but it's also, you try to put into your conversations with them here and there, right? Like the other day I was driving with my son, he was driving, and he's a very new driver, just a few months. And I gave him a tip at some point. I can't remember what it was. I gave him a tip. He got all angry at me. Mom, I know how to drive now. I told you about this. I know how to drive now. You don't need to tell me how to drive. I chuckled a little bit and I said, okay. I said, I'm sorry to make you upset about that. I said, so what does it mean to you that I give you a tip? And he says, well, when you do that, it means that you don't think I am a good driver. And I said, oh, well, if that's what you think, then I can see how you'd be angry, because that's not what I meant at all. Actually, he's a very good driver. And I said that to him, you're a very good driver for your age. But the thing about learning something new, and this is the growth mindset part, and that's all I said, and I didn't elaborate. I said, the thing about learning something new is that you have to think about it as, even though you know how to do that now, you got a license to prove it, your learning about it will never end. And I gave him the example of our work. I've been a therapist now for 20 years. Every year I do more professional development, learning something new and trying to expand and better myself. The learning never ends. And I told him, I said, the day you think your learning ends is the day your life is going to be stagnant and you're not going to go further.
Yeah.
So that's growth mindset, right?
100%. Yeah, that's it. And so the second one is kind of what you were talking about. Our son is trapped in the car with you, so he doesn't have any option but to talk. And, I guess if we're going to be helping our teenagers along, we need to have an idea of where they are, which things are easy for them, which things are more challenging for them, which things they might need to push a little harder with. And the only way that's really going to happen
In
is
terms of their self-growth, you mean?
yes,
Yeah.
well,
Okay.
in terms of anything that they're trying to learn or grow or get better at. That only happens when you initiate conversations with them. The chances of them initiating conversations with you are much less. Sometimes that happens, where they will reach out and they're open to ideas and suggestions about something. But for the most part, we're sneaking in these little tidbits after initiating conversations with them. And we have two teenage boys, and maybe that is a little more challenging sometimes, just because they're not always open and receptive to having these 35-minute conversations about, how to do better in school or whatever.
That's the
But
thing. It's not going to go well if we try to keep it at that.
no,
It has
so
to be short,
we've
short
learned
and
short and sweet. We've
yeah.
learned that that's important. But also for Tina and I to have a read on our kids and understand what it is that they don't even know they need, but we
Yeah.
know they need. So we take a look at them. For example, one of our kids, it's just harder for him to open up, harder
Yeah.
for him to tune in emotionally and then get those words out of his mouth. And
He feels like he has to deal with things on his own. This is
yes,
his first
yeah, kind of
resort.
more independent rather than a mutually interdependent kind of thing. So that's something that we are helping him work on. He may not be able to verbalize that that's happening with us,
Yeah.
but this is a process that we are actively engaged in to help him along.
Yeah.
Sometimes we are outwardly, openly naming what's happening here, where we
Yes.
think this is something that you need to, work on to get a little better at. But for the most part, it's just under the surface, modeling things for him without coming out and saying, this is a skill that you really need to learn.
But it's okay to be able to say that at times, right?
At times, yes.
Not in a negative way, or just like, like that seems to be, because the other thing with him is that he beats himself up. So that's when you see that, it's like,
Yeah.
I notice you're really hard on yourself. Like you have to be careful with that, because that sometimes keeps you from trying again, right? Because you just kind of crash with that, trying to be perfect all the time. You can't be perfect all the time, and that's okay. Like that kind of language.
Yeah, and for the teenagers, like adults, really that place where their brain is ready to learn is when they are calm, and that really happens when you are safe and connected.
Yeah.
So that sense of safety where I can make a mistake and no one's going to pounce on me, or connected where someone really sees me or they really get me, but not pushy about it. So we're always trying to find that fine line with our kids, especially with that fellow who has a hard time expressing himself. We need to create a space of safety for him in order for him to open up. And it's been a work in progress for us too, and for him. And I think in the end, that growth will be benefiting him as an adult.
Yeah.
Now, to take the other guy, he's more susceptible to groupthink and kind of worrying about what other people think about him and trying to please people. So he probably can't sit down and write a letter on the areas he needs to work on and identify that as the number one thing. But for Tina and I, it's obvious that that's happening, just because we have. I'm 51, so I have a lot more years of experience to be able to identify things like that, and I see it in my clients. So now we're working with him in that gentle, kind of safe, connected way, initiating conversations about that, and just getting him to think about it more thoughtfully. And that's part of growing, is reflecting on it, trying something different, seeing if that works, and having Tina and I there as the soft landing for them to be able to come back if things don't go well.
Yeah, because with him, it's about helping him see, okay, and what if you did this and your friends didn't like it? What would be the worst case scenario of that, and would you still be okay? Because what you like and want is important too. That's part of growing and being more confident in what you want. And it's okay if not all your friends like you if you decide to do that.
And for him also, the fine line of being generous, which is very generous, and losing and not setting your own boundaries. That little place that happens where sometimes you can get a little too loosey-goosey with your boundaries because you want to be super generous, and then you don't get your own needs met, and it's okay to ask for your own needs and identify what they are and get those met too, rather than meeting everybody else's needs. So yeah, it's it's a work in progress, but overall, I think the point is that it's okay that you don't know how to do it yet. That's fine. We're working on it. That's what we do as humans, is we try to get better. So, and what's the third tip?
The third one, I mean, because the first two are relying on you guys as parents, right? Like the first is you role modeling it, and the second, and talking about it, and the second is kind of finding out, keeping an eye on what they need to work on, and having conversations, gentle conversations here and there whenever you can, based on their own struggles that you're seeing in terms of self-growth, to help them think about that. But the third one is trying to have external sources to help you with that, so that's not all on you. And also, because your kids are teenagers, they won't hear everything you say. So sometimes when you can have other sources, external sources, that can help. I forgot to bring the resource. Can you grab that?
Oh yeah, sure.
So some of those resources can be people. Like with our kids, we've made We've made a pack with a couple of people that are adults that we trust and that we know have our kind of philosophy of parenting, that our kids know they can turn to them if ever there's something that they don't feel comfortable talking to us about, which, for most kids, there will be things that, even though we encourage them to open up to us, and there's nothing they can't tell us, and even if they made a big mistake, we'll still love them, and that's okay, and they can share it. So they know they have these key people. So those people also can be people that can give them that message of self-growth, right? And also, if you are spiritual in your family, there's always that element of bringing in that higher power that you have faith in. And if your kids have that faith as a way of also seeking support and, in the mindset of growth, asking their higher power for some help in something they're challenged with or they struggle with. So that's another external source. But for, to make it even more practical, there's other sources that are in books and resources. There's a ton out there, and we have some at home that we're just going to show you here. But this is actually, oh, thank you, honey. This is a set of deck cards that we just have on our dining room table, and it's all questions for families. So it's a lot of just questions to help you identify how your kids are thinking, right? And it's fun questions. You get to know them. And once in a while, we have this on the dining room table. Once in a while, at dinner time, we'll pull out a question and we all kind of share our answers to it. So that's a valuable resource that can help you understand the self-growth part. But then there's really neat workbooks for teenagers that are geared towards teenagers and that have all the elements of self-growth in there. So if you're struggling on, what is self-growth and how can I bring that up, these workbooks can be really helpful. So we have one here that's about mindfulness and acceptance, that can be helpful for kids who struggle a little bit with anxiety. And then you have another one here that's about developing resilience with your teenagers. So that's about, becoming confident in who they are and understanding themselves a little bit more as they're getting older. And this one is about self-love, because that's a big key piece of self-growth, is having compassion and understanding for yourself. That's a key skill that if kids develop that, oh my gosh, as adults, they'll flourish. Because they won't beat themselves up to the point of giving up on things, and they'll give themselves self-compassion and try again, and right? And then this is the Covey. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but Covey that writes the 7 Habits of...
This is his son.
A son.
Yeah,
okay.
This is Stephen Covey's son, Sean.
Covey, sorry.
Okay.
I pronounced that wrong. So he has 2 books, and one is the 7 Habits of Successful Teens, or something like that. And this one is the 6 most important decisions you'll make as a teen. Yeah. It's very well done.
The kids love this book.
Yes.
It's in the bathroom, and they are always reading it.
Yeah. This one is more like a read. The others are more workbooks with exercises and things like that. But if you keep some of these things in the bathroom or around table, once in a while, the kids will pick up, they won't work through the workbook from beginning to end
No.
unless you have a very special child, like that really likes that kind of stuff. Our boys, no, they'll do a few in there, but at least whatever few they have, whatever few paragraphs they read is another kind of message, right? And there's this one that I like too, 50 habits of to increase your self-esteem. It's all geared towards teenagers. But if your kids like to read too, it could be book format. So there's this Chicken Soup for the Soul collection that's for teenagers, which is just a series of stories actually, and every story has a learning, and a lot of learning is about self-growth. So it's just another way. They're short stories, another way to get to some of those messages without it always being you sending it and them questioning what you're saying, right? It's an external source.
Although it is us sending it because we bought all these books and we placed them strategically around for them.
And you do have some, even through literature, like this is actually a book we got for our son who loves basketball. And you can talk about this particular coach is
yeah, he's a many-time champion basketball NBA champ. He has 11 championships, but he talks a lot about how to have a winning mindset and but he's not a hard-nosed coach only. He also does lots of meditation and he's very spiritual and just obviously our son likes it because he's starting to plow through the book there, but it's something where those messages are similar to the messages that we want to give them. But it doesn't come from us. It comes from a source that he trusts as well.
He respects so there's ways of getting at it externally that way, and that's what we wanted, just to give you some examples of that. So hopefully that helps you brainstorm some other ideas.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to get ready to wrap up. But before we wrap up, we always do. If you want to make a comment or two below, and what you think about some of these books, or you have some of your own books or some of your own ideas on how to support your kids as they're working on their own growth, please make a comment here. And we always try to leave with some kind of action piece. So what we're asking you this week is to look at each of your kids, if you have kids, if you can identify an area that you think that they could use some growth in, and sit down and really think about what it is that how you can support them, and try to put one of the things that we talked about today into place, whether that's having a conversation with them or you talking about your own stuff in order to get the message across, or maybe having some kind of a resource that they can tap into. Either way, identifying something that one of your kids are struggling with, and an area of growth that you think is important, and finding some way to have a conversation with them about that and supporting them along the way.
Yes. Yeah. And that's it for us today. And we always encourage you also to, like our Facebook page and join us also if you want to have more information on to better your relationship with your teenagers. We also have a private Facebook group that you may or may not be aware of. We have that listed in the comments there in the notes for this Facebook Live. You can ask to join that. We do both in that Facebook group. We do both tips and strategies and on improving your relationship with your partner. But also we have some information in there about also with your kids. So you have both. Best of both worlds.
There we go.
So thank you.
All right.
And thanks for those who joined live. And if you're watching this after, make some comments below. And we'll see you in a few weeks.
Okay. Take care, folks.
Bye-bye.
Live healthy, love fully.